Hello and welcome to another episode of Bondversations with the Bootleg Universe crew. I'm Lasky, Sam Lasky, writer and producer at Bootleg Universe.
Clark, Kenlon Clark, director and editor of Bootleg Universe.
Hughes, Graham Hughes, VFX artist, lead designer at Bootleg.
Maybe we should stop doing that. I feel like people are going to get annoyed with us.
Yeah.
I'm feeling annoyed with myself, if I'm being honest.
All right, that's the last time. We're very sorry. Today we wanted to break down some James Bond action sequences with our fearless director, Kenlon Clark. And we are going to be starting with The Spy Who Loved Me.
Yeah, I think that now here's the thing. When it comes to Bond, there are just a plethora of great action scenes to look at, to analyze, to break down. I mean, some of the best action ever done, obviously, is in James Bond.
I think it might be safe to say that the James Bond franchise is sort of the birth of modern action.
Yeah. And I think partly, when we talked about the editing aspect, the kind of speeding up and giving a much more intense approach to action, that Bond is largely a big part of that. So this is from The Spy Who Loved Me. And one thing that I think is really great about this action scene and something to kind of think about, and this isn't in every Bond action scene or every action scene in general, although this is some of the best are done like this, is that there's like chapters within the action scene. So sometimes you might have something where the character is just the protagonist is dealing with the antagonist and it's just one kind of extensive sequence. But what's great about this one is that it continually levels up. So Bond and Barbara Bach are in the Lotus and driving, and obviously an assassin on a motorcycle approaches. And this assassin very cleverly has their little sidecar with a explosion.
And so just here, it's not just about avoiding the missile. It's you have to go between the two trucks to avoid the missile.
Yeah.
It ups the difficulty here.
Yeah. And so obviously Bond takes him out and he gets covered in feathers.
And falls off the cliff.
Transforms into a dummy.
Bond makes a great quip.
All those feathers and he still can't fly.
And we get to watch
classic location stuff from Bond. You want to have the best cliff possible.
100%.
Yeah.
So then we go on to the next section, and we have essentially the thug henchman characters in a vehicle following, shooting, and doing their thing. So we're taking it up to the next level with this. And
this picture's a little fuzzy, but is this rear screen projection right now, or is this on location?
I think that's on location.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks real.
Yeah. And so there's the car that you can see at the gas station by Vegas. And chasing Bond's in his awesome supercar.
But clearly what's behind Bond and Barbara Bach when they're in the car is rear projection.
Yes. This is the Unreal Engine of 1982. No, 79. I can't remember what year.
Because I think it's so they
also
another off
the cliff
and land. There's a gag. Unfortunately, this guy gets his house destroyed.
Yeah. A lot of bystanders really.
But the first off the cliff is just it falls into the ocean. The second off the cliff is into the house. The guy's upset. You keep escalating each time.
Escalating each time. And obviously
Jaws is indestructible.
Everybody else, so what? And so then chapter 3, essentially, we'll say chapter 3, now a helicopter. And this is like, that shot is like one of the most Bond shots ever, which is just a sports car, Bond behind the wheel, a helicopter, and just
the explosions going off on either side.
Yeah. So a fun little break, little beats between each action's kind of chapter, and then just going all out. And of course, Bond knows the assassin in the helicopter as well. So there's kind of a nice personal touch. Some really great, like flying, obviously the chopper very low. Great sequence here, which they kind of mirror in Specter, shot like that. And, oh, look at that. Bond's even flirting while.
I just want to, because I brought it up, I just want to pause and talk about rear screen projection in the Bond franchise, because it's so important to all of the Bond action sequences.
Yes, going all the way back to the very beginning, obviously, rear screen projection has played a huge role.
So I think a lot of people, if you're a modern audience and you know anything about modern film production, you know that when there's characters in the foreground and there's a background put in, you think green screen, right? Before ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, really took over the VFX world in the 1980s, and innovated optical printing and made it cost effective and easier to do, most background replacement was rear screen projection, which means they're on a soundstage inside of a car and there is a movie screen behind them. They have previously filmed footage of the road and it's being shot. Here's the car, here's the screen, here's the projector behind the screen projecting the image on the screen.
Right.
And so anytime that Roger Moore gets a close-up in a chase scene or a driving scene or an action, in a lot of the action scenes, there's rear screen projection so that you can see his face rather than the stunt driver or the stunt double.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's interesting comparing his performance in the scene versus the people in the car behind him earlier, because they're clearly in a real location,
Right.
and the energy is so much higher.
Yeah.
Part of the issue too is, obviously they can make adjustments, take the car apart, et cetera, et cetera. But that is a very small.
It's hard to get the camera in there too.
Hard
Yeah.
to get a camera in there and keep it.
So,
feasible.
just insane stunt driving and flying here with the helicopter so low, passing the car.
I remember calling out one of these upcoming stunts as being like one of the best in the early part of the franchise.
And yeah, just awesome.
And spinning the helicopter on a dime as the car drives underneath of it. It's hard to emphasize enough just how difficult doing that kind of thing is. And this is probably the stunt you're thinking about. Driving the car to the ocean, and then we get the classic button on the sequence. What happens? The coolest thing ever. The car turns into a motherfucking submarine. Because, it couldn't turn into a plane. It couldn't turn into a tank. It just happened to have a car that turned into a submarine in the exact scenario when you needed a submarine.
Yeah. And, very simple tracking device, and Bond very ruthlessly.
Just sorry, secondary Bond girl.
He probably could have just, driven away, and how's a helicopter really gonna? But, he's James Bond, so he's dealing with his issues.
Great underwater cinematography in this movie.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the underwater stuff was shot in a tank in Pinewood. I don't know if this car was. I assume the car is a model, would be my guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that just, in terms of looking at Bond sequences, and anybody who, is going to do some type of action sequence, and I think even we'll say on our show, on the Guardians of Justice, particularly the 7th episode, which we've talked about before, is kind of thinking in terms of how do you continually raise the stakes for the character? How does that reveal aspects about the character at the same time? And how do you kind of roll that spectacle forward and forward and forward, and then creating those fun little moments or beats between each little action sequence. So to use, and we don't have it on screen, but to use with, our speed fight, including the part where Speed stops and just kicks the thug and then moves on to the next claymation battle sequence, and then to the final missiles all flying and the video game fight. Like you can kind of see.
Yeah, my philosophy as a screenwriter when I'm writing action scenes and set pieces, and sometimes you just write they fight because the people, the suits in Washington will figure it out. But when I need to be specific, I try to think about action scenes and set pieces as their own 3-act mini movie.
Yeah, it's like a mini movie.
With planting and payoff, the setup, the call to action, all of that, the 2 turning points, you want it to feel like its own thing, that if you showed it to somebody, they would understand completely, having not even seen the rest of the movie.
Right. Like even in that sequence, you kind of, when Bond is basically cornered and up against, we'll say, a wall, in this case, the water, and drives off of the dock, like in most cases, that would be the end for a character. But you actually see, twist, he's got a submarine car, because why not?
All right. I'm going to play the ski chase from The Spy Who Loved Me. Another clip from The Spy Who Loved Me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
one of a shocking number of ski chases.
So Bond has been sleeping with a woman in a cabin that he doesn't know is a Russian agent.
Log cabin girl.
Log cabin
girl. And she's going to call in the bad guys for him, obviously. This is, one of the all-time classic sequences because of how it ends. Again, this great cut there.
And a nice
it's right to the movement on the skis.
Yeah.
And then, this is very obvious rear projection.
Yeah. Could not be more.
But at this point, Bond's not in danger. He's just,
enjoying
a nice ski down the hill. He doesn't realize there's a group of assassins who are about to try and take him out.
Now there's a little bit of a weird screen geography thing that doesn't work right here, where they're headed right to left. He's headed left to right, again, right to left. Yeah. And then suddenly they're all in the same direction.
Yeah.
Really needed one more shot there to make it fluid. But now we pull back. Obviously, we see just how dangerous the train is, setting the stakes. We think it's just outrun the bullets. There's some great ski photography here of the cameraman on the skis following them through these canyons, and especially right there through the...
If you were a skiing cameraman in the 70s, you had a job on the Bond films.
Yeah.
I wonder, do they find a cameraman who knows how to ski, or do they find a skier who can hold a camera?
Hopefully, multi-hyphenate.
So then now we're changing the game. This is a turning point. His ski rod has a rocket launcher in it. Does the backflip.
Yep.
Proving how cool he is.
Yep.
Suddenly he's turned the tables on the bad guys, and we're headed towards the cliff. Here's the shocking climax. Oh, Bond's going to die. And just watch this shot, because the way the camera's positioned, you have no sense of how long he's going to fall. He could hit the ground the next second. It could take 10 minutes to fall all the way. It's just like an infinite space. And the button on the whole thing, the Union Jack.
The Union Jack, yeah. And what a stunt. Honestly.
Yeah.
And having to kick away the skis, seems very perilous to try and clear that.
In 2 minutes of screen time, you have double cross. The first act, he's being just chased and being shot at. The second act, he turns the tables, turns his ski stick into a rocket launcher. He takes a couple guys out, and then this incredible stunt is sort of the third act of the sequence.
Again, goes over the cliff. What's going to happen? Just like the submarine car kind of sequence. Ta-da! There's a twist in that third act. Yeah, what a great scene.
All right, Ken, what do you want to talk about?
Just for fun, real quick, let's just look at the GoldenEye tank chase. If you haven't admired this scene enough, I highly recommend it.
When I get to the point where he's in the tank.
So this is in St. Petersburg, and Bond is
trying to get the Bond girl back.
And boom, does it in the most Bond way possible. So if you haven't seen GoldenEye and you want to see James Bond drift a tank in a second, I mean, this is the place to see it.
Was this a specially made tank to allow it to do that? I think it might have been.
I think it may have been. And apparently, according to what I was reading about it, like they literally, it was suggested like in some short meeting. Like it wasn't even something where they were like planning this for months. One of the stunt coordinators had basically said, well, you know, what if he chases in a tank?
The tank drift.
Yeah, this is a T-55 tank, and it's on display apparently in this actual tank that he does is on display somewhere in, I think, England. So you can actually go see the tank that Bond does.
They go down a narrow pathway. What's Bond going to do? Is he going to let it stop him? No, he's going to just destroy these buildings.
So, you know, he's super calm. You know, he's literally destroying
500-year-old buildings.
500-year-old building. And
well, they were built by Russians, so who cares?
Obviously throws in some comedic aspects with the villain, the henchman. You know, he keeps drinking from the flask as he's watching. He can't believe what he's actually
Bond's
seeing.
Sort of in a convertible popping his head out.
So you get some good shots of Pierce Brosnan.
This kind of strikes me as being Brosnan's version of the Daniel Craig parkour chase, where he's just sort of like, yeah, cool. You do your thing. I'm just going to bulldoze through everything to get to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, that's the crazy thing. Like there is almost this, you know, whole thing we could analyze Bond behind the wheel of heavy machinery, because it's a common thing in a lot of the Bond films that you're like, you don't expect this guy, you know, to be somebody who's so familiar with like all aspects of big rigs and tanks and airplanes and you know, but he can kind of just do anything, and he's very aggressive in terms of his use of these things.
00 score,
right? And now we've upped the difficulty level here. They're driving on parallel roads across a canal, and he's got people shooting at him, and the truck's in his way. We keep upping the difficulty. We keep presenting obstacles that are bigger than the previous obstacle and letting him just bulldoze his way through them.
Bulldoze. He just drives over this car with it's like, oh, you know, they wisely show the characters, the military, you know, they get out, and then Bond goes over. Well, I guess we can just go up. Yeah, great shot. Obviously, you know, just lighting Bond's eyes like that. And then...
and also that was I mean, just
a little bit of humor.
Just a really great little moment here of reorienting the audience through screen geography.
Yes.
Yeah.
The car drives past, and as it sort of wipes to the tank, reveal the tank right there.
Yeah.
And we see that the two courses of action have joined back up again.
Yeah.
You need to keep reorienting the audience to the geography of the scene.
Yes.
Especially after having them in isolated shots for like the last minute.
Yeah. You want to be, you know, really creating these master shots. And then also, you know, like Sam just said, like you have, you know, panning over from one to the next. So you're connecting action.
And then an establishing shot of a new location. It's sort of... It's kind of it's not a terribly long shot just of this little roundabout, but it sort of helps establish now we're in a new beat.
Yeah.
Audience takes a breath. We're in a new beat.
And obviously, you know, the statue is center frame, and it's going to come into play in a second. Right. And so, you know, establishing that. Bond's just destroying everything he possibly can.
Oh, God.
And you have to show the guy jumping out.
Right. We have to establish that they lived.
Yeah. So that Bond's
not just a ruthless sociopath, psychopath. But there's, I mean, if you look at how much of these are isolated shots of the car he's chasing and the tank that Bond's in, it's most of the sequence with just isolated shots every 30 seconds or so to reestablish that they are in the same geographic
Yes,
space.
you want to create the visual cartilage that basically kind of connects these different scenes and sequences together. And there's always an inclination you want to just shoot a lot of like close-ups because it's very intense and everything. But it's these wide shots that really.
And what better thing can we put in front?
I mean,
product placement.
Product placement going on. And okay, and then just keep going forward, and I guess just go to the part where he takes. Bond's got a beverage now, if he needs it. Takes out the statue, and then great moment where he is literally just driving along with a statue.
I mean, it's literally putting him as like a heroic avenging angel, I assume that is St. Peter, since this is St. Petersburg.
Yeah. So he's going through. And
don't correct me, religious scholars.
Yeah. And then, still uses this statue in a weird way as some type of weapon to finish off who he needs to finish off.
Again, it's planting and payoff.
Yes.
We see the statue in the establishing shot. You're not thinking about it, but you see it.
Yeah.
Then we show it again. We show him driving into it. Suddenly it becomes this gag of him having it on top of the tank. You're like, aha, that's hilarious. And then it's used to stop two of the cars chasing.
Yeah. And just motors through this. Yeah. Does this. And then Brosnan's reaction here is great. Straightens his tie, boop, takes off.
You have to have the cool button. At the end of every Bond action sequence, you have to have him straighten his tie
whatever
his shirt. I mean, when Daniel Craig rips in Skyfall at the beginning, when he rips the back of the train off with the bucket from the loader or whatever, the backhoe.
Stops,
shakes out his jacket.
Straightens and keeps going. So. Yeah.
But again, it's the series of escalations, making sure you always reestablish screen geography. You orient the audience, make sure they know where they are.
Little character moments, the drinking of the flask, Bond fixing his tie, getting these, the close-ups of the actors' faces within all that. So you're really kind of bouncing between all of these different things. But it's very clear, what's happening. There's no confusion. And where everybody is in relation to everybody else is very established. So
the best action sequences are the ones that kind of force your character to make choices under pressure, because that gets you the most character for your buck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because this is your favorite Bond movie of all time.
Yeah.
So this is the final death of the henchman at the end of The Living Daylights.
Bond has escaped on this plane.
So, yes. The Bond girl is flying it, but she doesn't really know what she's doing, which is going to be relevant later. The lead henchman is there. He's trying to find and deactivate a bomb. Correct?
Yeah.
Henchman comes up behind him and grabs him with this rope net thing that's around these packages of aid. Now, we are establishing the rope. We are now establishing the knife. These are both things that are going to play throughout the sequence. And right now it's just pure physical struggle between two people. He cuts the thing, gets himself off, which causes the plane to tilt over. Suddenly she is going to react to that.
Just a long chain of cause and effect.
Right. She's trying to correct it, so it's all tilted up now. So she pulls the down arrow. Well, what does that do?
Oh, boy. And then inadvertently pulls up and...
Oh! And we have one of the great stunts.
What a great stunt, yeah. So now they're dangling off of this this net.
Over it's Afghanistan.
Yeah.
One of the great 1980s, we're going to help the Mujahideen because nothing bad will come from that movies.
That ought to work out.
We definitely want these people to take over.
But yeah, I mean, that's such an amazing, it's an amazing stunt. And
okay, we're establishing It might break. Very tough. And then, so that's one problem. Second problem, bomb's about to detonate. We're establishing two key pieces of the stakes of this scene. We pan up from the bomb so you know exactly where it is in relation to the fight that's happening.
Yep.
Bond dangles. It looks as bad as it could possibly be. He climbs his way back up. Now, this is, again, I'm not sure if this is rear projection. It could just be they've got him sort of facing at an angle that you can see the sky. But obviously, Timothy Dalton is not dangling from the end of a plane. To Stuntman, he's climbing up underneath. Again, we've made it even more difficult for Bond.
Yeah, Bond is...
but he uses that to his advantage because the bad guy doesn't know that he's there.
Yeah. He really keeping his, that your protagonist as the underdog as much as possible. Yeah.
Okay, the knife comes back out. We still have these two things, the knife and the net, the two most important things in this sequence. So you use them immediately at the start of the sequence. Well, Bond's cutting. The packages of aid start to fall away to knock this guy out. Still doesn't work. But it looks freaking cool.
Yep. Bomb.
I would like to see the counter a little bit lower on that bomb. I think it should be at like 30 seconds so we really feel it. A minute's a lot of time for James Bond.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you'd think that Bond is going to cut a rope or something to have this guy fall away, right? That's definitely what he's going to do. Oh, but wait. He's got another idea.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'd actually forgotten how this played out.
It's like he doesn't need a shoe.
And right now, the bad guy is begging for him not to do this, which I always found interesting. Like,
Timothy Dalton's Bond is very ruthless.
Great stunt of him falling with the shoe.
Plenty of time to think about everything.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great sequence.
Okay, what do you want to talk about next?
I guess just for fun, let's watch the Specter train fight.
All right, so this is the train fight from Specter between Bond and Dave Bautista. We're not huge fans of Specter on this video cast, but we wanted to say something nice.
Yeah.
And we love Dave Bautista.
Dave Bautista.
Dave Bautista is great.
He's a beautiful human being.
Oh my gosh.
We see Dave Bautista approaching through the reflection. Yeah, so this is as classic as a Bond fight sequence gets.
Yeah.
Bond versus a big guy on a train.
Yeah.
It's all the way back to Red Grant.
Right.
Yeah.
And Bautista's got like this Jaws kind of unstoppable quality to him.
And
out and one.
Yeah.
Now we want to keep changing the environment, right? We want to keep moving through the space. And we want the environment to change because of their actions, which we'll see is happening coming up here.
Yeah. Bond's giving it everything he's got.
Right.
One of the handful of times you see Bond just get absolutely manhandled.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing about this scene that's great is it tries to stay,
punches
believable.
The thing and the ceiling falls down.
Right.
Now Bond is realizing now he's not going to win by being stronger. He has to fight smarter. And so that's throwing the candle, setting him on fire, picking up the ice pick.
Yeah. He's relentless though. Bond still, even though he's getting tossed around like a rag doll, you see how, he's constantly.
Every piece of his environment. Again, we're changing environment again. We're now in the kitchen into the freezer. Because the exact nature of the fight is not changing too much. It's still a lot of just physical contact. But we change the environment to keep the audience interested in what's happening. Now, obviously, here's the third act, the moment of peril. Oh, and she's back up. Oh, but the Freddy Krueger's not dead yet.
You see the rope. He lands by the rope. We see the cases are going to come into play.
Yep, we're setting up the rope. You just need the prop to be in the shot. You don't need to draw too much. It doesn't need to be its own close-up.
Right, because it's kind of a twist, obviously, when you see, where the rope isn't just a weapon that he's trying to use to knock him out. You see
the barrels.
And the barrels are counting
and
down.
It is a countdown clock. The barrels are a countdown clock until he gets pulled off the train.
I feel like Dave Bautista could have survived that, though. I just feel as though he could have survived that. But
he
still,
can return.
Yeah, he could return, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
return with a new James Bond.
Yeah,
a new Bond movie.
Yeah, great.
So
sequence.
So what are the lessons we're drawing through? We're running through them a little quick because we're running out of time. But what are the lessons we're drawing from these action sequences?
I think you want to constantly. I think great action sequences generally put your protagonist is the underdog in most scenes and sequences, and they have to be as resourceful as possible to try and overcome. If they are the superior force in a scene, it doesn't feel quite as, particularly I'm speaking probably more of a hand-to-hand combat sequence like this. It just feels like so much more suspenseful when Bond is the underdog. Also, yes, changing environments, leveling up, like feeling like you're kind of like moving through levels.
And changing environment isn't just, going from, one, store out into the street and into another. It can be as simple as going from the inside of the plane to dangling on the outside of the plane, or going from one train car to another train car. It doesn't have to be drastic.
Right. Wide shots always look great on when you're doing a big kind of, I think, a spectacular kind of stunt. But when you're doing intimate fight scenes and sequences like that, getting close-ups of particular items. So yes, having them in the frame, like the rope, the close-up of him picking up the ice pick, stuff like that. Like, you don't want to, it's so easy when you're shooting stuff like this to kind of be like, okay, we got it. You got a bunch of handheld shots and we'll tie it together. But when you're really doing the care to include like close-up shots of grabs this, grabs that, it just really builds it out in the audience's mind.
And each shot should be its own beat, cut on the end of beats rather than in the middle of beats. A lot of modern action sequences, they're cutting 3 or 4 times in the middle of one punch.
Right.
One punch should be its own thing. The reaction can be another thing, but the punch should be its own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for watching another episode of Bondversations. I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep making Graham put Bondversations right there. We'll be back at some point with more Bondversations and more Bootleg University. We're going to keep trying to mix up what we talk about in these videos. Let us know in the comments below what you'd like to hear us talk about in terms of Bond or other movie franchises or anything at all. Thanks for watching.